Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us today for this very special episode of the Business Case for AI and Blockchain. Today, I have the great honor of hosting one of the most influential thinkers of our time, Don Tapscott himself. I believe there isn't a single person in our audience who has not heard of blockchain revolution. For me personally, this book has life-changing meaning, as it clarified the fundamental purpose of blockchain technology in the business world. Thanks to Don's work, I discovered the first real business cases for blockchain, and much of what we do at the business case is inspired by that foundation. Without further ado, I would like to invite on stage Don Tapscott himself.
Hello, thank you very much. It's great to be here. Thank you for the kind words, too.
Thank you very much for finding the time, Don. We are just a few days before the launch of your new book, which is talking about Identic AI. And I will jump just straight into my very first question. You have consistently mapped the big paradigm shifts, digital economy, the Internet of Value, and now you are proposing the next major shift with Identic AI. What exactly is Identic AI, and how does it fundamentally differ from today's copilots and agentic AI?
Well, it's a great way to start. Over the years, I've been lucky to identify a big trend and write the first book about it. Unbelievably, AI is going through this fundamental change right now that will affect all of us, and there's no book to describe this. So U to the power of 2, my co-author Joseph Bradley, comes out in a few days. And here's the story. So only a few years ago, the world was captivated by generative AI. Systems like GPT could write, summarize, create with startling fluency. And that breakthrough was quickly followed by agentic AI, which extended those capabilities by giving AI initiative, the ability to act, to manage tasks, and to pursue goals without constant prompting. And AI agents are permeating across call centers, supply chains, financial systems, and beyond. But today we're on the threshold of a far more profound development for each of us, and that's the rise of personal agents. They're the ones that really matter. And these are intelligent agents that learn who we are, hopefully reflect our values, and begin to operate as extensions of ourselves. So we call this Identic AI. And, these agents are a lot more than digital helpers. For each of us, they're going to be our consigliere and our private doctor who's been to every medical school in the world, and our cultural curator, and our mentor, and our librarian, and our editor, and our financial planner, our counselor, our infinite number of vice presidents and developers and editors. And they're going to change literally everything about not just how we work, but how we play and live and even think. And this sounds futuristic, but the building blocks are already underway. And my agent will be ready for me early in the new year, and I'll be on stage with him and me. And he's going to help me answer questions because I can't remember what I said in the digital economy 30 years ago on page 22. And within 2 or 3 years, I think these agents are going to be more common than smartphones, and they're going to be a lot more powerful.
In the blockchain revolution, you've advocated for decentralization. And on this show, this is what I try to convey to our audience, the importance of decentralization. So you warn actually against centralized data monopolies and argued for the distributed trust. So I'm wondering, are you also advocating for decentralization of AI in your new book? So all these agents, since they will be penetrating every aspect of our life, they will be sort of our twins doing this task for us and carrying perhaps our identity and some of the very important personal information. Um, do they need to be decentralized in your opinion, and to what extent is it actually possible?
Well, absolutely. And I mentioned identic AI, and we can come back to that, but it might make sense to talk about why we call it that, because it's not just the information in our identity anymore. It's about an extension of our actual intelligence. I'd be happy to discuss that. But yes, indeed, there's a big issue that's emerging. Digital arena is going to be an extension of you. In your lifetime, it'll have an IQ of 1,000. Who's going to own that? Will it be you? Or will it be the technology giants who already control so much of our digital lives? Today, it's not just our data, but our attention, our preferences, and so on are effectively owned or at least rented from a handful of these platforms. And in the identic era, this is not sustainable. If your most powerful asset becomes your digital intelligence, losing control of it means losing control of your life. Your human agency. Imagine something like product planning. Today, a company will place a product, a Coke or a Volkswagen in a movie to get you thinking subliminally about it. Well, imagine if products, or worse, ideas, political views can be placed in the digital extension of yourself by someone who pays, Google or Mark Zuckerberg and Meta to do that. So our digital identities, our identic AI has to be self-sovereign. Your data, your history, your values, but also your cognitive extension needs to be owned and controlled by you, not by corporations whose incentives, don't align with your interests. And to own our digital selves, we're going to have to decentralize the infrastructure from the ground up around open source, transparency, community governance. And thanks to blockchain, this is now technically feasible. I can go into that if you want. It's a bit of a story on how we're going to achieve this, but it's technically feasible, and it's also it's also achievable.
Yeah, that would be really great if you could unpack what exactly, how can we technically have this identic AI, have this identity agent performing tasks for us? Where is it going to be located, stored, placed on the blockchain infrastructure, single infrastructure?
Right.
Can it be interoperable, right? And be hosted in multiple blockchain ecosystems?
Well, the answer to that last part is yes, and yes, and yes. So how can this be done? I mean, give me a break, people say to me as I've started to talk about this. These giant juggernauts control AI. The Magnificent Seven, top 7 technology companies on NASDAQ, have a combined market value of over $21 trillion. Google just went up by 4% today. And this is 21 trillion, by the way, is greater than the GDP of Europe, of the EU. But history tells us that great juggernauts can fall by the wayside. And here's what a 5-layer model would look like to decentralize the AI stack. So the first one really is the physical infrastructure. We need to have DPIN, and instead of relying on corporate data centers, decentralized networks distribute storage and computation across millions of independent nodes. And these systems offer resilience that centralized platforms can't match. They resist censorship. They eliminate single points of failure. They enable smaller innovations and innovators to participate in a field that's dominated by the big incumbents. And advances in efficiency make these networks faster and more economical. So look at the interplanetary file system. Files are distributed across millions of computers all around the world, and we use blockchain technology to tokenize and reward, to tokenize and create incentives for people to do this. So, by the way, I didn't mention, but blockchain is the foundation to all of this. Now, the second layer up in the stack, I guess, is what we call a data fabric. And a decentralized data fabric strengthens this DPIN foundation. Today, most personal data sits inside corporate silos, and this is inaccessible to the rightful owners. You and I create this data as we leave a trail of digital crumbs, as we transform throughout, or as we move throughout life in the digital arena. The virtual mirror image of you may know more about you than you do, because you can't remember what you bought a year ago or said a year ago, or what medication you had or diagnosis had, or your exact location. Dozens of categories of data. You create them, but these data, but they get expropriated by these massive technology giants. So we can turn this upside down. Like cryptographic techniques like homomorphic encryption allow sensitive data to contribute to research or AI training without ever being exposed. And a fair digital economy can emerge where people can choose to monetize their data rather than having it extracted from them. Now, the third level up in the stack is what we call AI models, the models themselves. And, the rise of open source AI has already demonstrated how quickly innovation accelerates when control is shared. And as you said, Rena, we're looking at a hybrid ecosystem here where the big players are not excluded, they get to participate, but where the models are essentially controlled by the user. And we think that a global marketplace of models, both open and commercial, are going to allow everyone to assemble the intelligence that they need. And you combine this with stuff like federated learning, and this ecosystem really reduces dependency on central pipelines and central algorithms. Now, the next level up is what we would call autonomous logic, and powered by AI agents and smart contracts. I'm sure your audience knows about that. Contracts based on blockchain that are made of software and they self-execute. They have a bank inside them and so on. Well, these agents will transact not only with people, but with each other. And they'll form a complex sort of digital supply chain that requires new trust mechanisms. So you have stuff like know your agent frameworks that are anchored on blockchain that ensure verified and secure agents that can interact. And this is a good thing because it makes automation safer, more transparent, more accountable. And the final level of the stack is what we call the application layer, and that's what brings these capabilities to life. So a decentralized AI agent could help manage finances, guide healthcare, secure better services, participate in global AI development on our behalf. But critically, it'd be under control of the user, not of some giant corporation. So that's the first time I got to really talk about that in some detail. But transforming AI, and I'll be talking a lot more about it as this book comes out, But transforming AI in this way is going to challenge the entrenched companies for sure. But history shows that the dominant players, you know, have difficulty embracing a new paradigm, and breakthroughs often come from the edge. You know, from open communities, from startups, from people demanding that technology serves their interest. And I don't think a decentralized stack is a utopian dream at all. It's an essential step towards a fair, resilient, human-centered digital future. And I'll tell you, one of the few benefits of being older is I've seen it all. And, you know, I've seen back to the 70s where mainframes dominated everything. The bunch, Burroughs, Univac, NCR, Control Data, Honeywell, the juggernauts, and IBM. One of them got through, IBM. Then there were the mini computer companies. There were a dozen of those. Wang, Four-Phase, Data General, DataPoint, so on. The only one that got through was HP because it figured out it wasn't a mini computer company. It was like a printer company or something. And then after that, we saw the rise of the IBM PC. Well, that's gone. PCs are, you know, cost a quarter the cost of a phone. And, you know, then there were the internet juggernauts that were dominated everything. So, you know, change can happen. And we need to build a movement, really, a
Yeah.
movement for decentralization of the AI stack.
So this is not only about AI, but in general, do you agree that we need regulation to push for decentralization? So sort of industry 2.0 human rights stack on top of that technological stack? Or what do you envision must happen, or probably is already happening, for this decentralization to really take off? Because we have protocols, we have specific ecosystems, and some of the technologists really pushing forward privacy, cypherpunk narrative, creating awareness around the need and necessity of decentralization, also with the current outrages of Cloudflare, and fundamental business problems that centralized AI technology is facing today.
Yeah.
We are still, I don't personally perceive that we are at the point of, you know, at the top level in the government, regulators, business leaders, corporate leaders calling for the urgency of decentralization.
Well, this is a complicated topic. First of all, I don't think the solution to our problems is government only. Government needs to be a player. But for example, something around the issue of privacy. You know, we're going to have GDPR and governments are going to protect our privacy. Well, we don't need governments to protect our access to our data and our rights around data. We need to own our data, then we'll protect it ourselves. We may decide to anonymize it and give some healthcare data to science or sell some. Maybe we're super private. Maybe you know, maybe we're going to want to anonymize some data and share it for medical research and so on. So it's going to be a complicated ecosystem that will get us forward. So that's sort of the first point I would make. The second point is there are a number of things that can be done around AI. And in the book, we outlined 7 principles, really, on how AI needs to be managed. And these principles will really be overseen by a community which is growing in strength, where government is a participant, but also where there's a movement that we build to protect ourselves. Now, and these are principles like reliability, Transparency. Systems need to be open and auditable. Human agency. They ought to empower, not subjugate human capabilities. Another one is adaptability. Businesses and individuals need to cultivate a culture of agility and continuous learning to remain relevant in AI-driven domains. We have stuff like fairness, accountability. Individuals and organizations use AI systems in all kinds of domains. And because of that, clear accountability is required. And then safety. We need to have safety in mind, whether in healthcare or transportation, other sectors, that these agents do no harm, whether physical or intangible. Now, beyond that, there's a much bigger sort of issue, which is that I think we're going to need a new social contract for the digital age. And if you think about that, like what is a social contract? Is the deal that we make between government, private companies, and civil societies. And the social contract that we have right now is an industrial age social contract. As we made the transition from kings and feudalism to the industrial age, we figured out some things, that everyone needed to be educated. So we created a public education system. We figured out that people are going to live in the cities, so we'll need a social safety net. They can't just go and grow more stuff to stay alive. We figured out that, if you're going to have public companies, maybe they should tell shareholders something once a year. That was the SEC Act of 1934. We've done none of that for this new age of identic AI. So there are a lot of elements to this. And this is the final chapter of the book that we talk about this, security of the personhood. We need to have continuous education. I think we need to have universal basic identic AI. Otherwise, there's a digital divide that makes the old internet divide look like kid stuff, really. It's not just about technology haves and have-nots. It becomes knowers and know-nots, doers and do-nots, people who can communicate with the rest of the world and those that can't. We need to be assured health and well-being. This is a basic right. And again, this technology can help us. Doesn't matter what country you're in. The fundamental problem of healthcare is that we have an unlimited demand and a limited supply. So in most countries in the world, this is handled through a public system and rationing. It's not a pejorative term. It's an economic term that happens when you have more demand than you have supply. In the United States, there are other factors that are brought in, like your ability to pay, that determines whether or not you get health care. Well, imagine if the supply becomes unlimited, that each of us has a doctor who, has been to every medical school in the world and has read every paper, and that all of the healthcare practitioners have these tools to analyze, X-rays and to help them with everything from, diagnosis through medication, avoiding drug interactions and surgery and so on. We also need to have economic security. I think clearly there will be massive structural changes in the workforce. Entire sectors are going to be wiped out. So we're going to need a basic universal income, but that's just the beginning because people get satisfaction out of doing things, I think. And there's lots to be done. It's just there isn't a market to fund that. So we need to find new ways. As part of the social contract, there are other factors. We're going to need climate security. We need peace. We need institutional accountability. And these are all things that we don't really have right now in the industrial age that we're going to need.
And speaking about social contract and the fact that the government decided to privatize everything since the 80s. And now we're talking about having the freedom and the ownership of these digital spaces. How do you see this, us as a society, as a blockchain community, and what you have long advocated for, mass collaboration that would transform institutions? How do you see that in practical implication of that? Shall we organize ourselves as a DAO, enable governance and engage millions of people, and then come up with some sort of proposal that we will lobby to the government? The same for the universal basic income. I wonder, from your perspective, where shall we start
That's a great
so
idea. I
we
mean,
can
a
change?
DAO is a powerful new decentralized model to do all kinds of things. And the decentralizing of the AI stack will require that, DPIN, and a lot of other decentralized stuff that can be achieved through DAOs. I don't know. That's a really good topic. I mean, where could we use a DAO in everything that I've talked about? Building a new social contract, for sure. Developing a secure platform where this Identic AI serves people, not corporations. That's going to require a big ecosystem and a big collaboration. A DAO would be a great vehicle for that. I know I have a hard stop here in 3 minutes, but
Going back to your book, yes,
yeah,
thank you so much for
yeah,
taking the time and breaking down these complex questions. And so, from the point when you published Digital Economy to Blockchain Identic AI, which of your predictions do you feel are finally coming true? And to just wrap up, I would like you to send one message to our audience.
yeah,
Mainly, we have blockchain protocols, startup founders, but also we have investors and
yeah.
media. So, a very diverse community. But we are all unified with the decentralization discourse, and our mission of this show is to educate and empower.
Well, over the years, what I've written has stood up pretty well. There are some things that I would emphasize more. I mean, if you go back to the digital economy in '94, that was the first big book about the web. I argued this is going to be amazing. Will change every institution. There's a chapter in there on what happens to traditional media that reads well today. But I was very upbeat. I had a section on the dark side. I said some things could go wrong. I said, I think we could lose our privacy in an irrevocable way. Check. I said, we could see a bifurcation of wealth occur as the asset class of the digital age, data gets captured by a small handful of companies. Check. I said, I hope that governments will be able to use this, but it could go the other way. We could end up that technology is not really helping with government, but could be used by unscrupulous people to build bad models. I said, I think check. I think the internet will bring us all together, but it could go the other way. We could have self-reinforcing echo chambers where the purpose of information is not to inform, but rather to give us comfort. Check. But this was like just a few pages of the book. And it was a heady day, it was a lot of excitement. And there's a lot of excitement around AI today. And hopefully, once the book comes out, the term identic AI will take hold. Over the years, a number of these neologisms, newly invented words, became part of the vernacular. And some of them didn't. But this is a term that I think we need because agentic AI is not good enough because it's a very broad topic. The agents that really matter are the ones that our personal agents, our personal identity becoming smart. So, and and that question is for a further dissertation in a memoir to be written at some point in my life. But for now, I have one particular message: AI is changing fundamentally. Um, I'm sorry to say, but happy to say in some ways, there's no book about it. So I would encourage people to go get the book, get it online right now. It's called You to the Power of Two: Redefining Human Potential in the Age of Identic AI. And I'd encourage you and ask you, even hope that you would, not only buy the book, but start embracing this term identic AI so that we can build a movement um, based on that concept, but a movement which moves towards decentralization of the AI stack. And maybe if we do that, this smarter, smaller world that our kids and my grandchildren inherit might actually be a better one.
Don, thank you so much. And we're very much looking forward to the launch of the book on December 2. I'm definitely getting a copy as I have all of your books. So appreciate you being with us today and sharing these ideas about AI decentralization. And let's build a movement all together.
Great.
Follow the business case for AI and blockchain. Please follow Don Tapscott. He's very active on Twitter and LinkedIn. And we're looking forward to the book launch. Thank you so much, Don.
Yeah, I'm at D Tapscott on Twitter, and LinkedIn, just Don Tapscott. Okay, thanks so much. And the best way to get the book is in massive volume. Christmas is coming soon. Take care.
Indeed. Thank you.
Bye.